Robin, thank you so much for joining us here at Santa Barbara Arts TV. It is a real pleasure to have you here. Congratulations on an incredible film, Savvy, Women, Money, Freedom. Congratulations, Robin, so much to converse about. Why don't we just start with you a little bit about you and how you feel about this whole experience? Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. And thanks, Armando, for having me on. It's, of course, a pleasure to be speaking with you this morning. Yeah, I'm delighted to be having our world premiere of Savvy documentary at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. I'm an alum of the festival. They've always treated me really well. They do such a great job. So it's really a wonderful place to have the world premiere of this film.
Amazing. Congratulations. And you're a documentary filmmaker. This isn't your first film. You've done several films, but a little bit about you, Robin, because I was reading from the press kit that you actually come from a very strong finance background. Could you share a little bit about that? I know, yeah, a little bit about your finance background.
Well, I mean, it's been a while, but yes. So I did get my master's in business administration, and I worked in the stock market for several years, actually over in Europe. I was living in Luxembourg, and I sold IPOs. So I do consider myself somewhat financially savvy. I also grew up with a father who's an investment counselor, and so he helped me understand about investing and about the stock market. So I had a great role model in that way. But I think what's so poignant about my wanting to make this film, Savvy documentary, is that I got married, and for 25 years, I personal finance kind of took a back seat. I focused on the children and on volunteer hours and on the schools, and I really didn't keep an eye on personal finances. And so I ended up divorced at age 50. And for the first time in 25 years, I was solely responsible for my financial well being. And I'm sure there are other women out there that know what that feels like. It's having to manage retirement and investing and 401ks, and it's a little overwhelming. And so I was motivated to make a film about this. I was really surprised to learn how many women abdicate finances to somebody else, whether that's their husband or their partner. And it's a dangerous and vulnerable place for women to be, right? Because women live longer than men. We spend more time out of the workplace. We earn less, 82 cents on the dollar. So we end up with longer lives to fund with less money.
Wow. And it's just an incredible documentary, Robin. I was going to ask you that. What were some of the things that you were surprised by? Because there's so much. I watched the film. It's an incredible film. One particular bit was the millennial bit. I was very impressed by the stat about millennials not doing as well as other generations. What were some of those things that you were most shocked by, or what did you learn from this experience?
Yeah, that statistic especially was shocking for me. So I think we can all imagine that our grandmothers might not have, paid a lot of attention to money. They left that to their husbands. Perhaps our mothers did too. But the fact that the millennial generation has a higher percentage of women that abdicate financial decisions to somebody else, mostly to the men in their lives, really scared me. So this is not something that's getting better, right? In fact, if anything, it's getting worse. And I was fascinated by that. As a documentarian, I wanted to dig into, why is that the case? Is it the Cinderella effect? Is it because we're afraid of emasculating our partners? What is it that makes us want to just not deal with money?
Mhm. And that's a great point. And then the other part, not to give too much away from the documentary, but then you meet with a group of women that are the tennis and stocks group that seem to be of age. They've been meeting for. Share with us a little bit about that particular experience and how you approach that group of women and how well they're doing, because that was a remarkable group. I mean, something to emulate across the board, if you could.
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes is a group of 14 women who started an investment club in the 80s when they were in their 30s. And so they're all, elderly women now, and still very good friends. But they talk about how they didn't know anything about money or stocks, most of them. And so they developed this group, and they met once a month, and they decided what companies they wanted to invest in. And the the group is still going strong. I think originally there were 16 women. There's still 14 that they've just stuck to their group, but they've all made a considerable amount of money, individually and as a group. Not that that's really the most important thing. What's fascinating about this group of women is the confidence that they have gained from knowing about the stock market, from knowing about that, from having a little bit of their own money, from being able to join in conversations with men at cocktail parties, about the stock market, about investing, about growing your wealth.
Mhm.
And that's a fun scene in the film. It's also somewhat humorous because these are just wonderfully characteristics. Sorry, they're wonderful women, and they're very charismatic. That's what I wanted to say.
They really are. Now, quick question because we're living in some very interesting times, these pandemic times. I'm not sure if you had share with us a little bit about the timeline of the film because the timeline I can imagine may have been pre-pandemic and then it moved into pandemic times. Or how has this time period affected the production, if at all, or has
Yeah.
that been a factor?
Oh, it was definitely a factor. We were only a third of the way through filming
Wow,
when COVID restrictions, hit all of us.
wow,
I was just really in the beginning of fundraising as well. So production halted completely.
wow.
Luckily, we had some scenes in the can, so we were able to do some remote editing of those scenes while we were waiting to shoot. But really, it shut down production in a big way. Um, we had to change. We were going to fly to New York, and do a bunch of filming in New York. And when New York was hit so drastically that we had to pivot and actually fly a few characters out. There was an investment group of women out there that we wanted to film,
Mhm.
and ultimately we just had to cancel that and find a group locally. But that scene in particular, they all live in Sacramento.
Oh,
And, if it wasn't the pandemic, which California Film Commission told us that we couldn't have more than a certain number of people on set, um, if it wasn't that, it was worrying about the California fires that were going on and the smoke quality in the air. So we
wow.
couldn't be inside because of COVID, but we couldn't be outside because of the air quality. It was also 104 degrees. So we literally just waited and finally found a 24-hour window where the smoke dissipated a bit, where the heat came down a little bit, and we ran up there and got that scene shot. But yeah, it was a challenge. But I'm enormously grateful to not only my team but also the subjects that were willing to jump on airplanes and come out to California
Mhm.
to film with us, so that we could get the film made.
Now, I was very impressed because from what I gathered as well, there seemed to be a content changed as well as we saw stimulus rounds being announced and as the trillions of dollars being announced. I had a feeling that one or two of the subjects did address that. Did you notice any of the advice changing or any of the themes changing as we enter millions of people unemployed? There's a great scene where millions of people are. You put a stat. How did that affect the content, if at all, or did that change things a little bit? Or
Well, it did. I think that it really, we had to think about what's the most practical and important content that we put in this film. Aside from the stories, what do people need to know about money? And building an emergency fund was especially poignant. It always has been, but if there's no emergencies, if people haven't lived through emergencies, then you're like, yeah, well, whatever, I'll do that down the road. But COVID was a very, very strong example of why we need an emergency fund. And women were hit more drastically than men during COVID. So many more women lost their jobs than men did during this pandemic.
Mhm.
And so if you've lost your job and you don't have an emergency fund, how do you pay your rent? How do you pay for food? How do you pay your insurance? Right? These were all really important things. So we did have that, at the top of our mind when we were thinking about what content and what information, what valuable, tangible takeaways did we want to make sure the film included.
It's an incredible film. It really is, and it's great advice for across the board. I know it's geared primarily for women and freedom, but across the board, I just found the advice so sound and applicable across the board. Specific, I know you're well versed in finance, but I know you've also done some other documentaries. I saw you've also done some TED talks about AI and competence in women. Do you think that women in specifically are a little bit more prone to difficulties with money because they don't have the knowledge, or why do you think from the film that potentially women have a little bit more difficulty with finances?
I think it's cultural. I think that women could be, and many women are brilliant with finances. It's more, why is it that there's sort of this trend that women don't take the reins of their personal finances? Why is that? And culturally, it's the same reasons that we see less women studying math or science, right? Culturally, we have there's sort of these gender norms that men are good at math and women aren't, right? Which we know is absolutely not true. But if society is telling us that, then we as young girls stop. So we listen, we hear that, or it infiltrates us in one way, whether it's unconscious or not. And we begin to realize that it's not really cool when you're in seventh grade to be good at math or to be good at science, right? Especially in co-ed education. And it's really sad. But I think also those type of messagings discourage women from even trying or wanting to. So I would also say that when it comes to the investment world,
Mm,
Wall Street was made by men for men, not purposefully exclusive of women at all. It's just that there weren't any women involved in creating Wall Street. And
mm,
so a lot of the warlike analogies, a lot of the sort of malification of Wall Street is intimidating to women. And so there's this, you know, sense of ambient belonging that it's mainly male and not female.
mm,
And I think those are some of the things that we need to disrupt.
mm,
Sally Krawcheck at Ellevest is doing a great job of that. It's not that we need everything to be pink. I mean,
mm.
God, let's not go that direction. It's just that we need to understand that we can be included in it as well.
Absolutely. And you do a great job, by the way, Robin, in mentioning that. And I was very impressed by this particular scene in which a woman actually outperforms a male investors more often than not. Not to spoil the movie or provide too many spoilers, but I love that it's true that side by side, oftentimes women do outperform men when investing. What was your experience with that? Were you aware of that, or was that shocking to you, or what was your experience with
It didn't shock me at all because I understand that the women are more risk aware,
that? Hmm.
right? Women tend to research carefully a company that she might want to invest in and then hold on to it, right? Hold on to it knowing that, I'm not going to be a day trader. I'm not going to get spooked and flip this tomorrow if the market goes down. I believe in this company for the right reasons, and
Mhm.
I'm going to hang on to it for the next 6 months to a year or longer, right? Whereas men tend to um, be day traders a little bit more. They tend to get spooked. They tend to jump in and then jump out. And what we know about good investing is that it's not timing as much as it's time. It's
Mhm.
really time in the market, right?
Mhm.
And so if you're thinking about your future, if you're trying to save for retirement, then the idea is to get in well diversified, with a well diversified portfolio. Stock picking is very risky, um, and then staying in for the long run, letting your money grow.
Robin, what an incredible film. Once again, I can't emphasize enough how wise the film is, how savvy essentially it is for everyone, really, for both men, women, children. One key feature that you start with a movie with is credit card debt and what the ailments of can you talk about that a little bit? Did you know that was going to be a focal point about credit card debt and how that's affecting our society a little bit, please?
Yeah, credit card is debt is such a pervasive issue in the United States that was an important story for us to tell, and it was about looking and finding the right person to tell us that story. And it turned out to be Yaneli Espinel, who is a wonderfully brilliant first generation American. And she tells a story about how she was also, the first person in her first generation, neither of her parents who went to college. And so she gets a full ride scholarship to an Ivy League school. And she obviously is very different from most of the kids around her in terms of privilege and resources financially. Um, So she's working side jobs, and but she walks out of class one day and there's a bank that set up a big tent and they're offering free t-shirts and free pizza and take a frisbee. All you need to do is sign on this line. And she said, well, no, you don't know my background. Like, I don't qualify. They said, sure you do. Absolutely. So she signs, and the next thing she knows is a week later, she gets a credit card with $1,500. To her, that was like free money. This is crazy. Now she can go get the Uggs and the backpack she needs to look like the other kids, right? To fit
Yeah.
in. What nobody ever explained to her was how compounding interest works, how interest works, how when they send you a statement saying all you need to pay is $45, that if you don't pay the full balance every month, you are going to end up with compounding interest that's going to make this huge, right? I mean, I think her interest rate was close to 30%. So these things were never taught to her, and often aren't taught to any young kids at that age when they're giving credit cards, right? Well, she ended up with over $20,000 in debt.
Ah, gee,
So
goodness.
this is a problem. This happens all the time, and
Mm.
then people try to get out of credit card debt by going to some of these predatory lending options that again are dark holes that are really challenging to get out of.
Yeah, it's just an overall feel-good movie when once again, not to spoil the movie, but she does overcome that, and it's a wonderful film. You've been very generous, Robin, with your time. Robin Hauser, by the way, is Robin's full name. Robin, what do you hope women, men, folks watching this will take away? Is there something that specifically that you'd hope that they'll maybe a piece of advice or some wisdom that, if anything, because the film is jam-packed with a lot of great wisdom across the board, but is there something that you really want to convey to the audience in this film with this film?
I really hope they feel empowered. I want to dismantle this intimidation. I hope women, even who are in very, good, comfortable marriages, I hope they realize that they need to take an active role in finances so that if anything does happen to the person they're depending on, they can make it on their own, and that they won't be, subject or prey to someone out there that wants to control their money for them, which, as we know, happens all the time. So I think I want to empower women to take an active role in personal finance. It feels so good to be in charge of your own money. So really, just to start the discussion too, right? To have that discussion with your partner, with your spouse. I think that's all so important.
Incredible. Round of applause for you, Robin. Last question. When is this screening? Do you know the day, and where can we contact you for more information to learn about the great Savvy film? And yes, please, that information.
Yeah, I do. So the film will be available virtually online. You can buy a virtual ticket anytime from April. We could buy the tickets now, and you can watch the film from April 1st to April 10th. We have two drive-in screenings, and I would love to meet anyone there. I will be there in person. So the drive-in screenings are Saturday, April 3rd at 3:30 p.m. Down at the community college parking lots. Also Monday morning, bright and early, bring your coffee and tea. It's 8:30 Monday morning, April 5th. Also the parking lots of Santa Barbara City Community College.
Wow. Robin Hauser, congratulations. Amazing, amazing film. I highly recommend it. And it's been a real pleasure, Robin. Thank you. You've been extremely generous with your time. And congratulations. Just amazing.
Thank you, Armando. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's a delight to speak with you.